Welcome to the Impact Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Beck, founder of the Sales Activist. And today we have a great episode in store for you. Today, we're going to talk about whether or not you should be scripting your calls, your appointments, all of your interactions. We're going to be talking about the importance of scripting and how that can impact your success. Now, whether you are for scripting or not for scripting, if you're against it, it's okay. We're going to be talking about that today during today's episode. And the title of today's episode is To Script or Not to Script? That is the question. So we're going to be digging into that in just a moment. We'll be right back. And we're back. This is Joe Beck, founder of the Sales Activist, and welcome to the Impact Sales Podcast. Today, we're going to be unpacking all about the topic of scripting. You know, to script or not to script, that is the question. So, one of the things that happens with a lot of people as it relates to their sales effort, their sales process, their sales interactions, it's obviously the topic of scripting. How much should you script for your interactions? Now more than ever before in the day of AI and AI support and all that we do, I thought this was an important topic to talk about. Now, I'm going to go on the record to say that I am hugely in favor of scripting all that you do. Now, here's what I want to say, though. I want to put a little disclaimer behind that. Just because I'm in favor of scripting, it does not mean that you should sound like it's a script. I believe that the power behind scripting really comes from the opportunity to develop your skills from that script outward. And here's what I mean. If you have a script for something that is important to you and your business, whether it's scheduling an appointment, whether it's an actual sales interaction, whether it's whatever, a follow-up, if you have a script that works for your business or is a part of your business, it's important that you use that script as a foundational piece to build on your communication with the people that you're speaking with. It's not the end all. It's not going to do everything for you. In fact, the worst thing that you can do is have a script and sound like you're scripted. So to avoid that, how you get beyond that is to start with a base script, but use it as a living, breathing document that works through the work that you do. It's a starting point. It's a foundational element. It's not where you stop. It's really where you begin. And I'm going to tell you why that's so important. Couple of things that are really critical, especially in today's day and age. Look, if you're like me, like most people, when it comes to repetitive tasks, things that can take a little bit of time, once you started working with AI, whether it's ChatGPT or any other of them, you start to utilize it as a tool to do some of the things that may previously have taken you some time. So it's very common to go in there and say, write me a script for this, write me a script for that. And generate a script, and it will understand your tonality. It will understand your messaging. Typically, it'll understand you to a degree. But the challenge with that is that now we're becoming dependent on these things. And here's what I'm going to tell you about scripting. If you become dependent on those tools, which don't get me wrong, the tools are amazing, and I think they're critical to your success. But if you become dependent on that tool doing that piece of what you do, you need to understand that you're only scratching the surface with it. You need to go further. And here's what I mean. If you are forced to follow a script, you need to make sure that you make it your own. I talk about this all the time. There's nothing wrong with scripting, but you need to make it your own. If you use AI to generate, make it your own. If you find a script from somebody else that you like and you want to modify, make it your own. I think scripting is important, But the really important piece to this process is not just the scripting. It's learning from it, adding to it, and using it in a way that benefits your business. And I want to give you a methodology to follow to make that happen in a big way for you and your sales efforts. So the first thing that I will tell you is when it comes to scripting, especially if it's a short script, you need to try to add as much personality to it as you can. Now, I don't mean somebody else's personality, and I don't mean the AI's personality. I mean your personality. It needs to be your personality. Now, why is that important to your success? Well, what happens is when you're using something that isn't in alignment with your style, your personality, your approach, it will come off in all the wrong ways for you. It won't resonate with your audience. You will be perceived as either nervous or anxious, or by some people, maybe even a little deceptive, because while the script may be sound, if you don't deliver it the right way, it's not going to resonate with the audience. And I'll give you a comparison. It's like having somebody else write a song, and that person masters the performance of that song, and then they hand the lyrics to you and they say, go ahead and sing it. Go ahead and sing it. Now, can you sing it? Sure, you could sing it. Can you go out there and mimic what they do? Yeah, you could probably do that. But by not making it your own, you're leaving something short in the process. Now, if you take that song and you make it your own, you change it up a little bit, you make it special, you personalize it, well, in that scenario, that's going to be more powerful. And here's why: because as human beings, we will naturally and more comfortably align ourselves with things that we feel a deeper connection to. If we feel connected to it, if we make it our own, we will deliver it more effectively. We'll deliver it more effectively. Now, that's not to say that we do a horrible job delivering somebody else's script or somebody else's lines or lyrics, right? Of course we can deliver it. But when you make it your own, it is in complete alignment with you and your personality. It has a much higher likelihood for success. And look, that's the bottom line, guys. That's why we're here, to improve your performance, to give you better outcomes, better successes, better results. Well, how we go about doing that is doing things a better way. So when it comes to sales and scripting, you need to figure out how to make it your own. Now, I will also go as far as to say that the more it is yours, the more likely it will succeed. Now, it still has to functionally operate as an effective script, right? You can't just go off the reservation and start talking about things that don't necessarily apply to your prospect or client situation. It still needs to be relevant. But assuming it's relevant, if you're scripting something using your own voice, using your own approach and your own personality, I would take that script against anything else that you grab from a third party and try to deliver as your own. And the reason goes back to pride and confidence. Whether you know it or not, if it's something that you're a part of, you're going to have a higher degree of pride with it. Your confidence will be higher, right? Your confidence will be higher. Absolutely. You know, if it's you, if it's your words, your approach, your personality, your confidence will be sky high. Now, how you go about converting that script to being your own is really the topic that we're talking about today. Look, I will tell you, I don't think there's anybody out there that won't say that scripting is important. How you script is what the difference is. If you script the right way, if you script and personalize things, if you make it about your personality, if it's in alignment with you and the way you approach things, that is much better than not scripting. Because the alternative And this is why I'm in such big support of scripting. The alternative is not having a plan. Not having a plan. Now, I know that there are people out there that will say, well, I like to go into every engagement organically. I'm not arguing that. I think that's great. I think, though, pieces of that interaction should be scripted. Now, I don't mean scripted to the point that it has to follow that path. I just mean that when you get to a certain point, you should say certain things. Like in your opening, when you're following up, when you're working through the sales process or the discovery process. I think there are things that should be scripted. I think you run the risk of getting off track and losing momentum in the sales process if you don't script. Look, you can easily engage people organically and see where things go. But here's what happens. It's like a dog seeing a squirrel. You will find yourself, or sometimes the prospect will take off in another direction. And if you don't have the scripting down, if you don't know what you should say, if you don't know how to bring them back, if you don't know how to get back on point, staying on target, you're going to struggle with your sales momentum. If you script, if you build in a script that you've customized, that you've made your own, that doesn't come off as a script, but it's known so well by you that you just jump right into it, you will always stay on track. And when things tend to try to go off track, it's easier for you to nudge them back in line. Now, I think scripting is an important element to your success. But just as important as scripting is, I think it's important that you stack up multiple mini scripts in what you do. And here's what I want you to do. This is a little exercise. I want you to think of your sales interactions as this little mini puzzle that you need to plug in different pieces a certain way. In the middle of those pieces, there might be static pieces that are what they are that you don't control. And that's your prospects' responses. That's your prospects' reactions and their feedback, right? Those things you don't completely control. That's a third party. But the pieces that you can control, the elements of the puzzle that you place in there, you have complete autonomy and control over them. And if you know what scripting piece to use and where to place it in the puzzle at the right time, you can build a very successful sales puzzle. Now, I know it seems counterintuitive to use the word sales and puzzle in the same conversation because it's not a puzzle. It's simply a matter of taking things step by step. I don't want anybody to hear puzzle and get nervous and anxious, like, oh, just one more thing I have to solve for, right? You were solving it anyway. You were out there trying to put the puzzle pieces together all on your own. I'm just going to simplify it for you. So in any productive and highly results-oriented sales process, you're going to have little mini scripts, little mini puzzles inside the overall puzzle, the pieces that make up the final picture. And it's your job, your role as a founder, an entrepreneur, a coach, a consultant, somebody who's selling for another company. It's your job to be a master puzzle maker, to build those pieces the right way. How you go about doing it is in the messaging of the script. Now, here's why this is so important to you. If you choose the right pieces in the right place, things snap in place very easily and you maintain and build momentum. If you choose the wrong piece, it doesn't fit. And this is exactly how I want you to envision scripting. If you choose the wrong script, or if you choose a script that isn't personalized, if you choose a script that isn't in your own voice, in your own tone, in your own personality, it's very much like trying to take a puzzle piece and jamming it into a spot that just won't hold it. It's not going to get you where you want to go. You're not going to have the pieces fit nicely. Now, on the opposite end of that, if you're able to piece together the right script in your own tone, your own style, with your own personality, and it could just be a piece of that sales interaction. You drop it in that open spot, it fits nicely, and the overarching picture of your sale starts to take place. And that's how I want you to look at scripting. Don't think that you have to script the entire thing step by step, all the way through a sales process or all the way through a presentation. Yeah, it's great that you could, but you don't have to do that. But what you do need to do is you need to make sure that certain elements, certain pieces, certain functional chunks of your sales interaction you have down cold. And you have it done in a way that your personality shines through, that your approach, your style, your personality is all over it, because people will find comfort in that. You will find confidence in that. Here's why. If you try to fit those pieces that are somebody else's words, somebody else's approach, somebody else's personality into the sales process, the pieces won't fit and the picture won't come together. But if you're able to take those scripts, break them up, chop them up into small, manageable pieces, master them in your own voice, and drop them in where necessary, you'll generate great results. So let's take a couple minutes to talk about what those pieces are. What pieces are we scripting? Well, maybe we're scripting our opening engagement with people, how we get an appointment with them in the first place. That should certainly be something that's scripted. It should be something that we have down cold, and it definitely should be something that aligns with our personality. Then we need to script how we initially engage people when we start to talk to them. What do we say? What do we not say? What should we be leading with? And that script actually probably is much more heavily focused on your prospect, getting them to open up, getting them to share with you. Why? Because in a discovery call or in a first meeting, when you're trying to get to know them better, what's most important? You learning and talking about what you do, or learning what they need? Definitely learning what they need. So your scripting is geared towards getting them to open up and talk. Now, you can organically engage and follow along, but your scripting should be all about them describing what's important to them and what they're looking for, what their dream outcome or result would look like. What would the next piece look like? Well, maybe that would be the presentation piece. Here's an idea. Let's make sure that our presentation piece, how we present our product or our service or our offering, let's make sure we have that dialed in, that it's scripted. So much so that if somebody walks up to you on the street and says, "Hey, tell me what you do," you should be able to rattle that off. And it should come off in a way that's very, very comfortable and in alignment with you and your personality. I recommend doing a few things. I recommend incorporating stories into that process. I recommend, if you have a script and it's geared towards describing what you do, drop a short story in the middle of that. Stories sell, and people relate to stories. Drop a story in there. It could be your story, could be a client story, could be another prospect story. Drop a story in there. Why? Because that scripted piece of the interaction could play a pivotal role in your success. Now, imagine this. If you're trying to handle that piece of the process and you are trying to handle it like somebody else's script, you're trying to sell the way somebody else sells, you're trying to follow somebody else's tone, somebody else's style, somebody else's approach, somebody else's personality, you're going to fail. You may get some success, you might have some results, but here's what happens ultimately. People will inevitably revert to their default setting as an individual. Now, I'm not saying we don't grow. Of course we grow. We learn, we adapt, we pick new things up. But I'm going to tell you that most of the time, from a personality standpoint, we're going to default to our basic personality, the way we are. If you're more low key and more quiet and diminutive in how you communicate, that's going to be the way you communicate most of the time. If you're more boisterous and outgoing and powerful in the way you speak, that's going to be the way you're probably going to default to communicate with people. All I'm saying is if you're going to script your way, script in your tone, your personality, and your style, because trying to deliver somebody else's style will inevitably lead to failure. What else might you script? Well, how you close and how you wrap up a deal should absolutely be scripted. Now, I know there's some people who are sitting listening to this thinking to themselves, well, how is that possible? How do you script closing a deal? Because there's just so many eventualities. They could say no. They could have an objection. They could do this. They could do that, right? There's so many of them. Yes, absolutely there is. But you should still have a style, an approach, and a script that you follow. Look, for most people, they've never thought through this for themselves and their sales process. Look, I know that there are people that are going to listen to this that still are out there winging it in sales. They're winging it. They know their product. They know their service. They talk to people and they say, hey, have you thought of this? Or I could help you with that or this. They're just winging it. They don't have a true scripted approach to what they do. And I'm not saying that you should try to go out and script everything in this interaction step by step. What I'm saying is you should think strategically and script certain pieces of the interaction. By doing that, you will set yourself up for success. You'll set yourself up to have a higher likelihood for a successful outcome because you will be in alignment with your personality and your style. When I work with people at the Sales Activist, many times I talk to people who have tried other ways of selling, or they've tried, they watched a YouTube video and they decided to try to sell that way, or they watched some webinar and they tried to sell that way. And my question was always, well, how would you say that for yourself? And they would say, well, my way wasn't working. And I would say, that's not what I'm asking. How would you say what they do yourself? How would you make it your own? See, when you find something that works, you stick with it. If you haven't yet found it, you seek it out. But just because you find something that works for other people does not mean that it'll work for you. How you increase the likelihood of it working for you is by building it and wrapping it around your style. And scripting is one of the most important examples of that. I can give people scripts for just about anything. But if you don't try to incorporate it in your style and try to make it your own, you will always lack in the results that you're looking for. But when you're able to master taking that script, making it your own, and here's the most important part, mastering it to the point that it sounds natural and comfortable in your communication, that's when you're going to get your greatest success. See, all of this is not to get you to read off a script that you created for yourself because it sounds like somebody else and now you've made it your own. All of this is being said and done to get you to a place where you master the scripted pieces to the point that you no longer are using a script. It's become a habit. It's how you do it. It's your way of doing it. The scripting is the foundational piece. It's the foundation. It's the starting point. It's not where you end. It's where you begin. So if you've previously worked with different sales scripts and it hasn't worked out the way that you would like, or if you struggled along the way with scripting, I encourage you to take a look and look at it through a lens of asking yourself, is this the way that I would say this myself? Or have I just taken somebody else's version and thought that I could just replicate it? I'm not saying there's not some powerful scripts out there. There are. No question about it. but you still have to deliver it in a way that works for you and your personality. Look, I've uncovered a lot of stuff. We talked a lot about scripting and the importance of it. I want to take a minute and highlight the most important pieces. The first is you should absolutely script. The difference is how you script will make all the difference in the world for you. I'm not saying reading off of a script, a teleprompter, or whatever you use is the answer. I'm saying you need to master what's on that sheet and make it your own. Make it your own personality, your own approach, your own style. We also talked about the importance of micro mini scripts, breaking up elements of the sales process into little mini scripts. Now, why did I say that? It's simple. Think about video in today's day and age. Why is short form video so popular? Attention spans are short. You need to get their attention. Short form does it. Same thing with scripting. Break it up into smaller elements, not so much for the audience, but for your ease of understanding. Master one piece. Place that puzzle piece right in there. Master the next. Do the same thing. And before you know, you have a complete picture of what you want to create sales-wise. And finally, when it comes to scripting, and this is so, so important, it's the foundational piece, but it's the mastery behind memorization and making it your own that is really the ultimate goal. Make it so that you know it so well inside and out that it is conversational. It just sounds like a conversation. It's natural, it's comfortable, it's you. When you can get to that point and master it to that level, you'll find your sales will skyrocket. Now, we've covered a lot of information, so I'm going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. And we're back. This is Joe Beck, founder of The Sales Activist. And I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today for this episode. Today, we've talked all about scripting, the importance of scripting, how you should look at and think about scripting in your business, as well as what impact it can have on your success. Look, if you're out there and you're struggling with things like scripting in your business, I would love to help and be a resource for you. Feel free to contact me via my digital assistant by texting the word sales to the number 409-509-7355. It's a pleasure to do these episodes for you. I want to make sure you get all the help that you need sales-wise. Connect with me if I can help you in any way. This is Joe Beck, founder of The Sales Activist, and we'll see you soon. Take care.